Hi, hello, how are you? Good morning, metalheads of the internet, and welcome to a brand new episode of the Metal Meltdown. Today we are talking about a brand new studio album from Witch Vomit entitled Funeral Sanctum. What? No, Chompy, there's no vomit to clean up anywhere. It's the name of the band. Witch Vomit, like witch, Wicked Witch of the East, like Wizard of Oz, Tell you what though, while you got that mop, why don't you finally do some chores around the house for a change and clean up? Cause you're a messy little boy. You're a little monster. All right, enough of this painfully unfunny little bit. Witch Vomit, Funeral Sanctum. This is their third full-length studio album, and perhaps, possibly, arguably, potentially, their most ambitious work to date, whereas Witch Vomit could be described pretty safely on previous albums and EPs like A Scream from the Tomb Below, Buried Deep in a Bottomless Grave, and Abhorrent Rupture, as a pretty straightforward, nasty, gnarly, old-school death metal band. Here on Funeral Sanctum, it feels like we're going into more epic and dark and melodic territory. This thing has a somewhat larger, somewhat grandiose kind of feel and vibe and presentation and production. Witch Vomit are playing around with more melodic guitar licks and harmonies and transitions as well. It's also quite bleak and cold and malicious and unforgiving. A lot of those old school death metal spices and flavors definitely do remain, I want to make that clear. But overall, I'd say this thing has more in common with the melodic, blackened death metal of bands like Dissection and Necrophobic than it does with the classic old school sounds of Cannibal Corpse or Obituary. Think of it like this. Previous Witch Vomit outings would probably be content immediately beating you to a pulp and tearing you limb from limb. This particular Witch Vomit outing, however, would rather hunt you in a cold, dark, potentially haunted castle built in the mountains. You've got the double whammy of Dying Embers and Endless Fall opening this record on a very dark and spooky and mysterious note, with these towering walls of droning, wailing, lumbering guitars, before then transitioning into some very grim and very sinister death metal, churning guitar riffs, pulverizing drums, some really dark, melodic, almost gothic harmonies and textures as well later on in the cut. There's also this little crescending burst of full-on blackened death metal with screaming vocals and blast beats. And the track closes out with a bombastic section of carnivorous death metal rhythm guitar and some flashy pyrotechnics as well. It's fitting this thing is called The Endless Fall because it really does feel like I'm falling forever. And may I add, also hitting some fucking sharp objects on the way down, If there is a bottom to this hole, I will be dead before I get to it. My fucking god, I'm fucked up. Then there's Serpentine Shadows, which does a great job combining some classic doom metal riffs and licks and harmonies and progressions with some really menacing death metal madness. It just has this massive and consuming atmosphere to it. I listen to this song and I listen to that little extra old school doomy inflection on the back end of that main riff, which is very Candlemask, Pentagram-esque, and I listen to that full-on transition into Death Doom later on in the cut, and some of that super fucking menacing fucking riff work in the verse, and I can just feel this dark, malevolent, ancient energy rising up within me, ready to be unleashed. And then Black Wings of Desolation goes back and forth between some really classic blackened death metal pummeling and some slightly more complex and technical and varied riffs and grooves and pieces, all leading up to some monumental doomy beatdowns and some more epic kind of crescending black metal outbursts. The closing number and title track, Funeral Sanctum, as well, is excellent. There's doom metal influence all throughout this thing, maybe not always as obvious or as prominent as some of the melodic death metal and black metal influence, but it's there, and in this song, in this moment, this kind of feels like if Incantation tried to write a Dissection song, because it just strikes this perfect balance between death doom and this more cold, classic kind of blackened death metal kind of vibe. And for a record that feels so big and bold and action-packed with so many different twists and turns and shades and spices and vibes and such, I'm surprised but happy to say that this thing wraps up in a pretty decent amount of time, barely 31 minutes. And you know what? Good for Witch Vomit, because this thing doesn't really need to be another minute longer. I'm sure that another cockier, more overconfident band would look at this album and go, nah, we can't end here. We gotta go on for another 20 minutes. Let's get bigger, let's get weirder, let's get crazier, let's get funkier. And maybe that would be cool, but Witch Vomit kind of went, you know what? We're fine. We've told the story we need to tell. We've done what we feel we need to do. We're good. Pack it up. Go home. GG, hell yes. The production here is fucking excellent as well. I mean, the guitars consistently have this, like, musty, visceral kind of sound and feel. It's still, like, gross in the vein of an old-school death metal record, but this thing gives, like, more spacious and ethereal and doomy moments a lot of room to really shine and sparkle. I'm feeling a solid 4 to 5 on this bad boy. Great record, the best and the most ambitious thing that Witch Vomit have given us to date, and honestly, now that I think about it, one of the more unique kind of death metal records I've heard so far this year. Like, this just has a sound and an atmosphere that I haven't really heard from anything else from death metal so far this year. Really love how Witch Vomit has incorporated like black metal and more melodic songwriting and melodic influences and more epic and doomy influences into their sound, and they've still retained a little bit of that old school death metal heart and spirit and flavor. I think if you're looking for something dark and evil to play on a cold, rainy, dreary night, boom, this is definitely it. This has me very excited to see what Witch Vomit are going to do next. I have no idea what that could be, but I have theories, but we will cross that bridge when we get there. For now, 4 to 5, great record. Definitely check it out. And that is it for the Metal Meltdown. I'm not an expert, nor do I claim to be. So what do you think? Do you like this record? Do you not like this record? And what do you want to hear from me next? And thank you for watching. Make sure you press subscribe right here so you get updates on the Metal Meltdown fucking immediately. Look, there's even more videos here. Join us on the Discord. Pick up some merch on the Redbubbles, please and thank you. And as always, you have yourself a fantastic fucking day.